I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. Lesson 18 in A Course in Miracles workbook for students. I'm Willie from the Ozarks, and we're here on January the 18th of 2023, going through our one-year course. And let's look at it. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. We're reading from the original edition today. The idea for today is another step in learning that the thoughts which give rise to what you see are never neutral or unimportant. It also emphasizes the idea that minds are joined, which will be given increasing stress later on. Remember, well, I don't know if you know this, but I'll just tell you that we're getting to the place where we're recognizing that we're really just one body, the body of Christ. Everything you look upon can be seen as the one. We're all, how does he say it here? It also emphasizes the idea that minds are joined, which will be given increasing stress later on. So we'll learn more and more about how we're interconnected. Today's idea does not refer to what you see as much as how you see it. Therefore, the exercises for today will emphasize this aspect of your perception. The 3 or 4 practice periods which are recommended should be done as follows. Selecting subjects for the application of the idea randomly. Look at each one long enough to say, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that whatever you're looking at. Conclude the practice period by repeating the more general statement, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. A minute or so, or even less, will be sufficient. Okay, so 3 or 4 times today we're going to take a minute, and we're going to I would close my eyes to start with, and I'd say, I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. And then open your eyes and look around and say, I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see whatever's around you. And say that for a few items. Just kind of randomly look around like we've been doing. And then conclude with the statement, eyes open or eyes closed, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. Okay? A minute or so, or even less. If you have discomfort doing it for a minute, even less. At least, do it a little bit. A few seconds. Okay, let's go take a look in our text reading. And I'm down here in a hollow because it just was so windy up on the top today. Kind of sitting on a hill. I showed that tree in the background because I just thought it had a good root system, showing how that it needed to be supported good, and that's what he was telling us yesterday. We were learning that the earlier ideas in this book there'll be many things built on them, and we want to get a good picture of the foundation so that as we build on it, things don't become traumatic. They become more beautiful. Okay? We're ready for in chapter 3. We're ready to start section 3, Roman numeral 3, Atonement without Sacrifice. And so we'll pick up there in just a moment. While you're turning there, let me tell you briefly about another apple tree. This is the Liberty apple. Shiny, deep, and you'll be able to find Liberty a lot. They're pretty popular. I've seen them a lot at local sales, plant sales. Liberty apple, shiny, deep red, lighter the further south Liberty is grown. Crisp apple that is scab immune and resistant to mildew, cedar apple rust, and fire blight. Late summer ripening, keeps well, one of the most disease-resistant apples ever developed. Isn't that good to know? One of the most disease-resistant apples ever developed. Has a McIntosh aroma with a crisp, juicy flavor essence. Very productive. So keep about 3 inches between each fruit. It's self-fertile. space dwarf, semi-dwarf, and standard trees and circles of 10, 15, and 20 foot respectively. Zones 4 through 7. So very nice all through the Ozarks, where I'm at. Okay, let's go take a look now at atonement without sacrifice. There's another point which must be perfectly clear before any residual fear which may still be associated with miracles becomes entirely groundless. The crucifixion did not establish the atonement. The resurrection did. This is a point which many very sincere Christians have misunderstood. Let's read it again. If many of us Christians have misunderstood this. The crucifixion did not establish the atonement. The resurrection did. This is a point which many very sincere Christians have misunderstood. No one who is free of the scarcity error could possibly make this mistake. If the crucifixion is seen from an upside-down point of view, it does appear as if God permitted and even encouraged one of his sons to suffer because he was good. Many ministers preach this every day. This particularly unfortunate interpretation, which arose out of the combined misprojections of a large number of my would-be followers, has led many people to be bitterly afraid of God. This particularly anti-religious concept enters into many religions. This particularly anti-religious concept enters into many religions, and this is neither by chance nor by coincidence. Yet the real Christian should pause and ask. The real Christian should pause and ask, how could this be? Is it likely that God himself would be capable of the kind of thinking which his own words have clearly stated is unworthy of man? The best defense, as always, is not to attack another's position, but rather to protect the truth. It is unwise to accept any concept if you have to turn a whole frame of reference around in order to justify it. It is unwise to accept any concept if you have to turn a whole frame of reference around in order to justify it. This procedure is painful in its minor applications and genuinely tragic on a mass basis. Persecution is a frequent result undertaken to justify the terrible misperception that God himself persecuted his own son on behalf of salvation. The very words are meaningless. Paragraph 14, it has been particularly difficult to overcome this because although the error itself is no harder to overcome than any other error, men are unwilling to give this one up because of its prominent escape value. Use it for an excuse, in other words. Well, God did it, so I can do it. In milder forms, a parent says, this hurts me more than it hurts you, and feels exonerated in beating a child. I remember my dad actually saying that. Can you believe that the Father really thinks this way? It is so essential that all such thinking be dispelled that we must be very sure that nothing of this kind remains in your mind. I was not punished because you were bad. The whole benign lesson the atonement teaches is lost if it is tainted with this kind of distortion in any form. Okay, I underlined that. I want to read it again. It has been particularly difficult to overcome this because although the error itself is no harder to overcome than any other error, men were unwilling to give this one up because of its prominent escape value. In milder forms, a parent says, this hurts me more than it hurts you, and feels exonerated in beating a child. Can you believe that the Father really thinks this way? It is so essential that all such thinking be dispelled that we must be very sure that nothing of this kind remains in your mind. I was not punished. Jesus talking. I was not punished because you were bad? The holy benign lesson the atonement teaches is lost if it is tainted with this kind of distortion in any form. Paragraph 15, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, is a strictly karmic viewpoint. It is a real misperception of truth by which man assigns his own evil past to God. The evil conscience from the past has nothing to do with God. He did not create it, and he does not maintain it. God does not believe in karmic retribution. His divine mind does not create that way. He does not hold the evil deeds of man even against himself. Is it likely then that he would hold against anyone the evil that another did? 16. Be very sure that you recognize how utterly impossible this assumption really is, and how entirely it arises from misprojection. This kind of error is responsible for a host of related errors, including the belief that God rejected man and forced him out of the Garden of Eden. It is also responsible for the fact that you may believe from time to time that I am misdirecting you. I have made every effort to use words that are almost impossible to distort, but man is very inventive when it comes to twisting symbols around. God is 17. God himself is not symbolic, he is fact. The atonement too is totally without symbolism. It is perfectly clear because it exists in light. Only man's attempts to shroud it in darkness have made it inaccessible to the unwilling and ambiguous to the partly willing. The atonement itself radiates nothing but truth. It therefore epitomizes harmlessness and sheds only blessing. It could not do this if it arose from anything but perfect innocence. Innocence is wisdom because it is unaware of evil. Innocence is wisdom because it is unaware of evil. Boy, take that one with you. Innocence is wisdom because it is unaware of evil, which does not exist. It is, however, perfectly aware of everything that is true. 18. The resurrection demonstrated that nothing can destroy truth. The resurrection demonstrated that nothing can destroy truth. God can withstand any form of evil because light abolishes all forms of darkness. The atonement is thus the perfect lesson. It is the final demonstration that all the other lessons which I taught are true. Man is released from all errors if he believes in this. The deductive approach to teaching accepts the generalization which is applicable to all single instances, rather than building up the generalization after analyzing numerous single instances separately. If you can accept the one generalization now, there will be no need to learn from many smaller ones. I just think only love is real is what he wants us to see, looking at the world through the eyes of Christ. And that he's serious about that. Life is eternal and it's now, and that resurrection is always a reality because there is no death. And he showed that in innocence. Nothing, that's Jesus talking, the author of this book. Nothing can prevail against a son of God who commends his spirit into the hands of his Father. Nothing can prevail against a son of God who commends his spirit into the hands of his Father. By doing this, the mind awakens from its sleep and the soul remembers its Creator. All sense of separation disappears and level confusion vanishes. The Son of God is part of the Holy Trinity, but the Trinity itself is one. There is no confusion within its levels because they are of one mind and one will. This single purpose creates perfect integration and establishes the peace of God. Yet this vision can be perceived only by the truly innocent. You have no desire to attack. Don't see guilt anywhere. That's the atonement. We're welding that chain up of forgivenesses until all welded together. It's the atonement. because we're letting the past go, recognizing the only thing that's real is truth, God, love, this now, holiness, joy, peace. Because their hearts are pure, this is paragraph 20, because their hearts are pure, the innocent defend true perception instead of defending themselves against it. Understanding the lesson of the atonement, they are without the will to attack. Without the will to attack. And therefore they see truly. This is what the Bible means when it says in 1 John 3:2, when he shall appear or be perceived, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Paragraph 21, sacrifice is a notion totally unknown to God. It arises solely from fear. This is particularly unfortunate because frightened people are apt to be vicious. Sacrificing another in any way is a clear-cut violation of God's own injunction that man should be merciful even as his Father in heaven is merciful, which is a quote out of Luke 6:36. It has been hard for many Christians to realize that this commandment, or assignment, I like that definition of a commandment, assignment, also applies to themselves. Good teachers never terrorize their students. To terrorize is to attack, and this results in rejection of what the teacher offers. The result is learning failure. Remember, that applies to you too. Be gentle on yourself. Paragraph 22, there's going to be a quote out of John 1:29. I have been correctly referred to as the Lamb of God who taketh away the sins of the world. Those who represent the Lamb as blood-stained and all too widespread error do not understand the meaning of the symbol. Correctly understood, it is a very simple parable which merely speaks of my innocence. The lion and the lamb lying down together refers to the fact that strength and innocence are not in conflict, but naturally live in peace. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, is another way of saying the same thing. And that's a quote out of Matthew 5:8. He's given quite a few Bible references here. There has been some human controversy about the nature of seeing in relation to the integrative powers of the brain. Correctly understood, the issue revolves around the question of whether the body or the mind can see or understand. This is not really open to question at all. The body is not capable of understanding, and only the mind can perceive anything. A pure mind knows the truth, and this is its strength. It cannot attack the body because it recognizes exactly what the body is. This is what a sane mind in a sane body really means. It does not confuse destruction with innocence because it associates innocence with strength, not with weakness. And that phrase, a sane mind in a sane body, is a Latin phrase from a Roman poet named Juvenal, AD 55, and the saying is actually mens sana in corpore sano. And I think that's a fairly close pronunciation. I did try to get it correct before I came on. In the last paragraph, innocence is incapable of sacrificing anything because the innocent mind has everything and strives only to protect its wholeness. This is why it cannot misproject. It can only honor man because honor is the natural greeting of the truly loved to others who are like them. The Lamb taketh away the sins of the world only in the sense that the state of innocence or grace is one in which the meaning of the atonement is perfectly apparent. The innocence of God is the true state of mind of His Son. The innocence of God is the true state of mind of His Son. In this state, man's mind does not see God, and because he sees Him as He is, he knows that the atonement, not sacrifice, is the only appropriate gift to his own altar, where nothing except true perfection belongs. The understanding of the innocent is truth. This is why their altars are truly radiant. Innocence is, and that was the last of that paragraph, but I want to read it. It's the last paragraph. I want to read it again. Innocence is incapable of sacrificing anything, because the innocent mind has everything and strives only to protect its wholeness. This is why it cannot misproject. It can only honor man, because honor is the natural greeting of the truly loved to others who are like them. Honor is the natural greeting of the truly loved to others who are like them. Wow, we show honor to one another, to everyone. They're all our brothers. The Lamb taketh away the sins of the world only in the sense that the state of innocence or grace is one in which the meaning of the atonement is perfectly apparent. The innocence of God is the true state of mind of His Son. In this state, man's mind does see God, and because he sees Him as He is, he knows that the atonement, not sacrifice, is the only appropriate gift to his own altar, where nothing except true perfection belongs. The understanding of the innocent is truth. That is why their altars are truly radiant. And I'll leave it to you to find where he says that the Lamb taketh away the sins of the world. I didn't write down that passage out of the Scriptures. The Lamb taketh away the sins of the world only in the sense that the state of innocence or grace is one in which the meaning of the atonement is perfectly apparent. The innocence of God is the true state of mind of His Son. Wow, isn't that beautiful? Okay, and I think we all know what we're going to do in our lesson today, don't we? Let's just look at it. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. We're going to do it 3 or 4 times today, and just start by saying that, and then look around yourself and say, I'm not alone in experiencing the effects. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see, and then name it. And let's see if we can get a song in before the wind blows my tripod over. Let's hope that doesn't happen. If it does, we're going to call it good for today. Get myself situated here on the hill. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that tree. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that rock. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that leaf. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that leaf. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that log. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing.